from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I'm Reverend Charles Harrison. And on this episode, we're going to talk about Black voters. Have Black voters put all of their eggs in one basket? And if so, has it been beneficial to us as a people? And are we now beginning to see a shift in how Black voters are voting? Welcome to Real Talk, and I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, your host on this podcast. And today, I want to talk about a subject that has really been important to me, over the years, and as I have been trying to analyze the voting patterns of Black Americans in line with the advancements of Black people in America today. I've certainly been concerned with what I feel like the lack of progress in some areas, and my concern that as Black Americans, we have put all of our eggs in one basket when it comes to voting. And certainly the debate is, has that been helpful for Black Americans, and have we really advanced because of the fact that as a people, we have put all of our eggs in one basket as Black Americans. And today I want to really talk a little bit about that. I'm 63 years old now, and I have been a registered voter since I was 18 years old. So we're looking at about 45 years I have been a registered Democrat. I've always voted Democrat. I voted Democrat because my grandparents voted Democrat. My parents voted as Democrat. And, the Democratic Party has always been viewed as the party of Black America. I don't think the Democratic Party would be able to have the kind of success that it has had nationally and statewide and locally, particularly in large urban areas, without the support of Black and brown voters, and particularly the Black community. We tend to vote, around 90% or above, sometimes a little less, for Democrats. And certainly in the last presidential election in 2020, it was the Blacks' voting support that was basically the key to the victory for President Biden, particularly in a lot of the swing states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Michigan. It certainly was the Black vote in urban areas that swayed that election toward President Biden. And we have, probably been the most loyal voters for the Democratic Party than anyone, probably since the 1930s, when Blacks kind of shifted from the party of Lincoln to the Democratic Party. And we have certainly voted Democrat in large numbers. And the question that one has to ask, and there's more and more conversation, I think, about this, particularly when it comes to millennials and Gen Z. Have we gotten what we have voted for as far as our loyalty to the Democratic Party? Are we seeing the results on the ground when it comes to our loyal vote to the Democratic Party? And there is some concern. And I think the other question I want to try to raise and answer on this podcast, are we the only ethnic group that has this kind of loyalty toward one particular party? And let's talk about this, because what caught my eye the other day was the recent polls that have come out, when it comes to this whole question, why does there seem to be a shift or a realignment when it comes to the voting patterns of Black America? In the last presidential election, I'll say the last two, in 2016 and 2020. In 2016, there was about 8% of the Black voters that voted for Donald Trump. In 2020, that number went from 8% to 12%. In the recent polling that is out now, that has shifted from 12% in 2020 to 17% in 2024. But what is striking is that there's another 20% of Black voters who say that they're not going to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. So when you look at that, the 17% and that 20%, that is about a 37% number of Blacks that are not going to vote right now, if the election was held today, for a Democrat. And that Democrat right now is Joe Biden for president. His numbers are about at 63% support in the Black community, compared to when he ran in 2020, he got about 87% of the Black vote. So right now, he's getting about 63% of the Black vote in 2024. And in 2020, Joe Biden got about 87% of the Black vote. In the recent polling in 2023, about 66% of Blacks identified as Democrats, 19% identified as either leaning or Republican. Are we beginning to see a shift? And if we are beginning to see a shift, why are we beginning to see this shift in the voting patterns in Black America? Now, what we do know is that the shift tends to be coming primarily from Black men. Younger Black men seem to be shifting away from the Democratic Party, the party that their parents, grandparents, and great-great-grandparents supported. There seems to be several issues that are going on when you read some of the reporting on this issue as to why, in particularly, Black men may be shifting away from the Democratic Party. And one of the issues is the perception that the Democratic Party is viewed as weak, less masculine, compared to the Republican Party that seems to be more masculine and viewed by Black men as stronger. So masculinity seems to be one of the issues for Black men, and many Black men felt like that they were better off 4 years ago than they are today financially. So those are some of the issues that Black men are giving as to why they tend at this point be shifting toward voting Republican, and particularly in the presidential race toward Donald Trump. My concern that I've had is, and though I am a registered Democrat and I've never, voted in a Republican primary in my life, I've always voted for a Democrat. In 2016, I voted for Hillary Clinton. In 2020, I voted for Joe Biden for president. So, I am, among probably that older group, 50 and older, that has pretty much been Democrat, and voted that way. I think my children and certainly my grandchildren certainly don't think the way me and my wife do, and they tend to be more open to voting for either a third-party candidate or voting Republican. And a lot of the conversations I've had with my children, their concern is, and I have a son who's in his 40s and a daughter in her 30s, and then I have two younger children who are in their teens or young adults. Their concern is they're not for sure that Black America for our loyalty toward the Democratic Party are seeing the benefits of that loyalty. And they look at a number of things. One, the average medium household income, where blacks still lag last among all the other ethnic groups in the country. When it comes to graduation rates among other ethnic groups, blacks still lag last, even behind Hispanics when it comes to the graduation rate. When it comes to the poverty rate, Black Americans still lag last when it comes to the poverty rate. When it comes to crime and violence in America, Black people still are disproportionately impacted by crime and violence. In many of our major urban cities, we're somewhere between 70 and 90% of the homicide victims and suspects, which is concerning. There seems to be high levels of crime, drug trafficking that takes place in the urban core. 74% of Black children are born into single parent households. We seem to still have a crisis when it comes to fatherlessness in the Black community. I just talked to a young man today prior to coming here to the studio to do this podcast, who's in his mid-20s, that he's had to raise himself, that he has not had that support at home, and he had to raise himself, which meant he ended up getting involved in the streets and getting into a lot of trouble. And, he's trying to find support out there to help him, move beyond, the judicial system, which he's caught up in. And because of that, he feels like he has had to struggle in his life, and he's struggling in his life to get on the right path. We are disproportionately impacted as Black Americans when it comes to the prison population. We're 13% of the population in America, but we're 30-some% of the prison population. And when you begin to look at the numbers, that's why you're starting to see Gen Z, millennials. We have the new generation, the alpha generation that's coming up next. And some Generation X within the Black community are beginning to question this blind loyalty that we have, to the Democratic Party. And I'm beginning to wonder that when you look at the numbers when it comes to Hispanic voters, and it seems like the Hispanic community has surpassed Black America in a lot of different areas. Their voting patterns seem to be different from ours. In the latest poll that came out when they did voter analysis from the New York Times, a Siena College poll, 46% of Hispanics right now are voting for President Trump, and 40% President Biden. Hispanics also, like Blacks, not to the same degree, have been heavily Democratic, but there seems to be a shift among Hispanic voters when it comes to their party identity and how they're going to vote in both the national election and state and local elections. And it seems like to me, Hispanics have done a real good job of not putting their eggs in one basket, but they have some of their eggs in the basket of Republicans and Democrats. And it seems like a lot of their agenda is being addressed because, they are in both political parties and seem to be influential in both political parties, and they are pushing their agenda. Where in the Black community, we seem to have heavy support in the Democratic Party, but not as strong support in the Republican Party. So it seems like for some, when it comes to the Black agenda and Black America, one party totally ignores us, which is the Republican Party, and then the Democratic Party kind of takes us for granted because they know that we're going to vote for them, and we tend to vote for them in large numbers. And the question becomes, has it really been beneficial for us as Black Americans to put all of our eggs in one basket and not to be able to play within both parties? I know the percentage of Blacks that are now starting to flirt with the Republican Party seems to be growing. And I think that's out of frustration for the lack of progress that blacks are seeing in some critical areas, and I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy. Even though I'm a Democrat, I think it's healthy. I have a lot of good friends who are Republican. I have friends now and members of my church who are looking even at a third party. There are some who think that the two parties, both the Democrat and Republican Party, have gotten to be too extreme. And many of them are moderate. They're either center-right or center-left. And they're looking at a third-party candidate. Some, are interested in supporting Kennedy, Robert Kennedy. Some are looking at supporting Cornel West, and they tend to be a little more radical who support Cornel West. Or, some are waiting to see whether or not the No Labels party is going to have candidates in this upcoming November election because they just don't want to vote for Trump or Joe Biden. And I think that if we, as Black Americans, start using our political clout, I think we can influence the agenda in both political parties so that these critical issues that are important to Black America can be lifted to the surface. We have to continue to address issues of education, poverty, the breakdown and the disintegration of the Black family. What can be done to begin to address these issues where 74% of Black children are born in the single household in this country, and we still have this crisis of fatherlessness in the Black community? How can we narrow the gap when it comes to the average household medium income so that we don't rank last or begin to increase those poverty numbers so that we have less and less Black people who are living in poverty, and we have more and more of our kids graduating from high school and either going into a trade school or getting some kind of trade or going to college, pursuing their education or getting into some field where they're able to make a good living and make a good career. I think this is a question that we really have to deal with as Black America when it comes to our voting patterns. I know there are going to be some that are going to argue that we have benefited from being, 90% or in the high 80s voting Democrat. I would argue that we have progressed in some areas, but in some areas, I think Black people have stayed stagnant as other ethnic groups have passed us, or in some areas we have regressed, and we have to be honest about that. Just look at what's happening in our urban cities. I'm troubled by that. Many of the urban areas are blighted. There are no businesses. We have too many abandoned homes. We have too many of those areas that don't have businesses in those areas. Many of them, we don't have grocery stores. We don't have drugstores. So we have to drive out of the neighborhood to get food because many of them are food deserts. And the big thing is that in many of these areas where large numbers of Black people live, we have high levels of crime and violence. And I'm frustrated as a Black American that we tend to turn on the news every night, and it almost seems like that someone has been shot or stabbed, shot or killed, shot or injured, and they tend to look like me. And that's troubling because it feels like some days that the face of a Black man has become the face of crime and violence in America. And that's not who we are as a people. That's not who we have been as a people. And I know we can do better, but I think it becomes difficult for us to do better if we're not engaged in, I believe, all of the political parties where we have a voice and the issues that are important to Black America are lifted up. We have to lift up the family. We have to lift up education. We have to address the issue of opportunities when it comes for advancement, when it in the workplace for African Americans, where we are making good money in order for us to provide and take care of our families. We got to have less and less broken families in this country, but we got to be at the table. And I feel like that if we're only at one table and we're not at all of the tables, then we're not able to uplift the issues that are important to us as Black people. We ought to stop demonizing Black Americans who want to be a part of the Republican Party. There are Black people who are more conservative in their worldview. They're conservative in their values and their religious outlook or perspective. And we ought not to demonize them. We ought not to demonize Blacks who have an interest to become a part of a third party, whether it is the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, the No Labels Party, or just wanting to be independent because they don't agree with the agenda of Democrats and Republicans, and they're looking for something different. I believe that we need debate in this country, and I believe for the Black community, we have to be at all of the tables. I don't think it has served us well to put all of our eggs into one basket. No other race is doing that, whether it be the white race, whether it be Hispanics, whether it be Asians or Native Americans. Nobody tends to vote like we are voting as a people. And I think that if we're going to continue to make progress as a people, as Black people, then we need to learn how to play the political game and play it very effectively so that we're able to advance the cause of our people, that we're making life better and improving the quality of life for all of our people. But in order for us to do that, in my opinion, we have to be more diverse than what we are as a people. I think those numbers have to start looking different, whether it's 70-30 or 60-40. We need to be at the table in both major parties and also in some of these third parties where we have a voice and we're able to articulate and seek to advance the agenda of Black America. Well, some people will say, well, isn't Black America's agenda any different from other Americans' agenda? Yes, it is. There are some differences. There are some things that are similar in all the different races. But there are some things that are uniquely affecting Black America that we have to address disproportionately. Not that it's not affecting other ethnic groups in the country, but disproportionately, Black people are being affected at a greater rate than other ethnic groups in this country. And we have to be at the table, in my opinion, in order for us to have an effective strategy so that we can have a voice at all of the tables to address these issues. Let's be more open as Black America. Let's be open to diversifying our voting power so that we have a seat at everybody's table, that we have our eggs in everybody's basket, so that we are addressing those issues that are uniquely impacting our community at a rate higher than any other ethnic group in this country. That's having an honest conversation about what's going on in America today. I think we can learn from our Hispanic brothers and sisters who seem to be doing well and advancing at a greater rate than Black Americans. And I believe that they're being smarter than us as Black people. They understand that they're going to advance their causes. They have to be at everybody's table. I think that if we're going to advance our causes and agenda as Black people, then we need to be at everybody's table. I want to see Black elected officials from every party, be in Washington, be in the state houses, be mayors, and on the city county council, representing all of these different political parties in this country. I think that's healthy for Black America. I think that will help advance our cause in addressing issues that we still lag behind in as a people. We have to be smarter, Black America. And we have to understand that we cannot just have a seat at one table and at other tables our seat is empty because we have put all of our eggs in one basket. The question is, are we better off in putting all of our eggs in one basket, or would we be better off if we had a seat at everybody's table? And from all different political perspectives, we were pushing the agenda of Black people. I don't think it's been helpful for us to demonize the Republican Party as the enemy of Black people. I think if we want to change what's happening within the Republican Party, and if we feel like they're not addressing our issues, then we need to be at the table. And we need to be supportive of those Blacks who want to be at that table, who may have a different perspective than I do on a lot of these critical issues, but it doesn't mean their perspective is wrong and mine is right. We have a different perspective. Maybe that if we are sitting down at the tablehood of sisterhood and brotherhood together as Black people, then we can find common ground as Black Democrats, as Black Republicans, as Black independents, as Black libertarians, whatever you want to be, and whatever your perspective is. I think it's beneficial for us to come together as a people and begin to strategize concerning these issues and have a seat at everybody's table, so that when these political parties are putting their agenda together or their platform together, that the issues that affect Black America are at the forefront. The days of us being taken advantage by one party and being ignored by another party, those days ought to end now. That ought to end now. Our vote should not be taken for granted, and we cannot allow another party to ignore us. We are a powerful voting bloc in this country. And we got to make our vote count. And the only way to make it count is that we need to be at the table of all of these different political groups in America. We need a seat there so that we can begin to advance the cause of Black America that affects us in unique ways, certain issues. I know some of you are not going to like this, but I'm going to push back against you, because I don't think it's been good and healthy for us not to have a seat at everybody's table. We are the only ethnic group that doesn't have a major seat at all the political tables. That's why I think we're at a disadvantage. I want our issues to rise to the surface. And when these presidential candidates are talking about issues to get support from the American public, they're talking about issues that affect Black America. And right now, our issues are not being discussed. Why? Because one political party feels like they already have our vote, and the other political party has been ignoring us. Is that helpful? Is that advancing the cause of Black America? I say not. Maybe our children and grandchildren are going to be the salvation of Black America, because they're not following in our footsteps. They don't just want rhetoric, they want results. And they're willing now to do what my generation was not willing to do and my mother's generation was not willing to do. They're willing to make their vote count. And in order to get their vote, you have to address issues that are important to them. I support the millennials and Gen Z, and I think Generation Alpha is going to follow behind them because I think what they're doing in the long run is going to be best for Black America. This is Rev Harrison on Real Talk, and I hope that you have enjoyed my conversation today with you and with myself, because I think these issues that are before us today are important. I'm Rev Charles Harrison, and this has been Real Talk. Join me next time as I bring more real talk about the real issues that affect our communities here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast. Share it on Facebook and Twitter and other social media sites. This is Rev Harrison, and I pray that you have a blessed and awesome day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.